Hello everybody, SlimKirby here. Welcome to, I guess you could say this is an episode of Slim Talks. I haven't really done one of these very much, but I have tried to save at least one of these videos for whenever I finish a Walking Dead season. And since we just finished the final season of The Walking Dead, the video game, I felt like this would be a good video to make, so I could talk about all of my final thoughts, how I felt about the final season, and basically just sum up my overall feelings about the Walking Dead games. So that's what we're going to do today, so I hope you guys enjoy. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. I'm going to try to keep it at least a little brief to some extent, but you guys know me and how much I ramble on, so we'll see if it actually ends up that way. So let's go ahead and get talking about The Walking Dead, the Telltale/Skybound series. So very quickly, I guess I'll just briefly go over how I felt about the game in regards to the first three seasons, for those who may have not seen my reflection videos when it came to those. Overall, I really enjoy the entire series. I had a lot of fun playing through all of these games. But for the most part, I feel like the series definitely kind of started on a high. And even though Season 2 and Season 3 weren't necessarily bad, I did kind of lose a little bit of enjoyment moving from season to season. I enjoyed Season 2 probably more than I enjoyed Season 3, just because it was kind of the continuation, and I was excited to see what would happen in the continuous story of Clementine. But of course, with Season 3 and what it did to basically kind of make Clementine the secondary focus as opposed to the main focus, well, I do think it was interesting. I think it would have worked better as a spin-off game as opposed to basically being the official third season of the actual story. But again, I don't think this seasons were necessarily bad. I just kind of enjoyed all the characters of the first season more. I feel like the choices that you made in the first season had more weight to them, and it just was a more interesting season for me, and that's why I kind of say that the first season, at least for the first three seasons, was the best season of the entire series. Now, when we get to Season 4, is that still true? Is Season 1 still the best, or did Season 4 actually manage to make a comeback? Well, while I will say that Season 4 definitely did make a comeback, I still kind of feel like Season 1 was overall the best season, but definitely going to give major props to the developers of Season 4, the final season, because honestly, I really enjoyed playing it. I wasn't really sure what to expect when I started, and, you know, through the entire series, I was pleasantly surprised, not just with what happened, but with basically just the general game design. It felt like a lot of choices actually did matter again. Now, when I say that, obviously I know that because of the nature of it being a video game and the fact that it can't have like 1 million possibilities of things to happen, like there's going to be some limits to what your decisions can actually do, because they still have a story to tell and they still have to move forward. If you did something to the point where a central conflict of the season would be wrapped up by like the second episode, like, what would the other two episodes be about? So, like, I understand that they couldn't necessarily, you know, make it so decisions had too much weight, because obviously there was still a story to tell. But still, like, I feel like with Season 2 and 3, compared to at least Season 1 and the final season, like, it seemed like there was much less weight than there were for the two seasons on the beginning and the end side of the overall, I guess, box set of the stories. So I was really pleasantly surprised with that where, again, it just kind of felt like the decisions you made actually did kind of impact a few things. The result of the story was still pretty much the same regardless, and no matter what way you look at it. but still, like, going through the story and just even learning after the fact that, different things could happen, whether it's like, one character you'd have more interaction with than another character, and that kind of stuff, I think was kind of cool, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. So the main kind of plot point of Season 4, or the final season, again, whenever I say Season 4, I mean the final season, because Season 4 is the final season. But the main kind of plot point for Season 4 was the fact that Clementine has reunited with AJ, the little baby that was born in Season 2, and who she was desperately trying to look for in Season 3. They are reunited. They started the story, started the season being back together, so we didn't really even get to see like how they actually got back together until much later on in the season when they showed a flashback scene, which I knew the flashback scene was coming, because it just seems kind of ridiculous to end Season 3 and then start Season 4 and it's like, oh, I guess she found him. Like, there had to have been more to going on there, because obviously, AJ was in this other new community now. So, like, obviously something would have happened. Otherwise, it'd been weird if, she just randomly took AJ and left. Like, oh, I'm taking this kid now. So, that would have been odd. But, yeah, they started the season together. I'm not really sure of the time difference. I'm sure it was, kind of hinted at or mentioned to some extent. But it does seem like a lot of time had passed since then. AJ was already talking. He knew quite a bit about surviving in this world. I mean, at least he was still trying to learn kind of the ropes and everything. Like, Clementine's definitely taught him a lot, but, he's still not at that stage where he can really hold his own. He still needs to have, like, a moral compass in Clementine to kind of keep things going. And I feel like a large part of the season was trying to basically use that as the driving force for the story. And honestly, I kind of really enjoyed that, because it gave me a lot of flashbacks to Season 1, because that's kind of what we were doing with Lee when it came to Clementine in Season 1. So it's kind of cool how the final season kind of, in a sense, repeated itself a little bit, so now Clementine was imparting all this knowledge to someone else. And I think it's interesting, like, even though I didn't warm up to AJ as much as I warmed up to Clementine in the beginning, I think you really have to kind of look at the context, because when it comes to AJ, like, he never had a life before the apocalypse, while Clementine did. Clementine actually had, like, some form of humanity before the walkers started roaming the earth, and Lee kind of had to show her that, there's a brand new world out there, and you have to defend yourself, Clementine. While with AJ, like, AJ was just born straight into this world, so obviously there were different liberties that needed to be taken, because, he didn't know of what humanity was like before it all. So, because of that, even though it was kind of similar and paralleling each other, of how, Lee to Clementine in the first season to Clementine and AJ in this season, there's still definitely going to be some differences just because of their much, much different upbringings. So I think it was really neat how the story kind of focused on that. As far as the, like, actual plot with, Clementine and AJ running into Erickson, having, to try to integrate with this new community, and then fighting a new group of bad guys while trying to fit in this community. Obviously, that was kind of I don't want to say the secondary plot, but, like, while the main theme of the game was trying to kind of prep AJ for everything, there's the plot that's going on with the community they're actually trying to be a part of. And, it's a pretty standard Walking Dead type of storyline. You're in one community, they're having kind of a rough time with another community. You're kind of trying to step in and either try to, mediate peace, or in the case of this particular storyline, defend yourself because the other group is bad. And I think it was kind of interesting. It was an interesting dynamic, because it really didn't seem like the villainous group or the bad guy group was really even, like, that evil. Like, they had a cause, they were trying to be peaceful about it, and, like, hey, we want you to join us. So you just have to fight for your right to survive because we're at war with someone. And, I guess that's the part that's wrong with it because they were trying to kidnap people for their own war. But, they were at least trying to kind of, treat their, not really prisoners, but their new inductees right. So, you could almost make the guess, or not really the guess, but the assumption that, maybe this bad guy group isn't so evil. And that's kind of one of the things I really enjoy about the Walking Dead storylines of even just the television show and the graphic novel. Because even though there's one side that we're heavily following because they're the implied good guys, to another community that's trying to live on their own through their own methods, they may not be looked at as the good guys. So I kind of like how they kind of had that dynamic. They didn't reveal too much about this bad guy group because, they still wanted people to kind of guess, like, is this group a bad group? Or, are they trying to actually help us? Are we actually in worse shape than they are? A lot of stuff like that. It really got me thinking as I was playing through this, and I like when games trying to get you to think about, like, just alternate sides and kind of get you to play devil's advocate a lot, especially in a game where it kind of forces you to try to make a bunch of different decisions, because when it comes to certain decisions, like, you're really trying to think, like, what do I pick, even when it comes to just what you want to say to a specific character. There were a lot of times in the story where I was, like, looking at the dialogue options, and unlike other series where it just felt like, I don't like these options, like, none of these options aren't what I want to say, it seemed like this time they actually had a lot of cases where there were a lot of dialogue options where, I could see myself saying one thing, and I could also see myself saying another thing, so it really kind of had me pick and choose, like, what I really, really wanted to do, and if not, it'd make me at least kind of curious to the point where, what if I pick this other option? What if I chose to save this other person instead? And it seems like there'd be, like, a lot of different possibilities in terms of how the ending would go. And that's another thing I kind of want to talk about, getting back into what I was saying earlier in the video about there being, like, a lot more decisions that kind of hold weight. One thing I really enjoyed about the final season was that at the very end of each episode, it gave you kind of a breakdown for most characters, not all of them obviously, but for most characters, they gave you kind of an idea of how each character, like, kind of felt about you. Like, it'd give you, like, a basically a title, like, this character is disappointed, this character is speechless, this character is scared or whatever, and it would give you reasons for why they were that way, and it'd also give you that percentage of, like, how many other people got that state of that character. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, there were, like, multiple routes you could take with at least most of the characters, because again, there were some characters that could have potentially died, there were some characters that could have potentially stayed alive that didn't end up alive at the end. I wouldn't say there were, like, different endings, so to speak, because the same main ending happens regardless of what happens. But still, like, just having a bunch of, like, side little conditions was kind of neat, and that's one of the things I really enjoyed about finishing the game when I saw that, wow, there's actually a lot more different scenarios here than I expected, and it was kind of neat to see. It was really, really, really neat to see, and I really kind of enjoyed that. So I want to get into the characters next. I really enjoyed a lot of the characters in this game. Like I said before, I loved all the characters in Season 1. All the Season 1 characters were classics. You had, the characters that were, like, really kind of tough and almost rough and coming off as heartless to an extent, but it's really just because they're serious about, trying to survive. You had the very quirky characters, the funny characters, the emotional characters, the characters whose hearts are in the right place even though they might not do the right things. There were just a lot of really great characters in the first season. Whether you liked them or not liked them, every character gave you an emotional response in some way. And I feel like for the most part, Season 4 kind of did that as well. Maybe not to the same extent as Season 1, but there were a lot of characters I really, really liked in this season. I liked Violet. I liked Lewis. Even some of the like secondary characters of the school, like Mitch kind of made me mad at the very beginning of episode 2, but I kind of came around to liking him by the end of the episode because he was kind of trying to warm up to us more, and he was being more helpful and more considerate of our feelings, and it was being part of the team, and I honestly felt like really sad when he actually died in the end of episode 2. Sorry if I keep saying that. Just a lot of different words that are going through my head right now. And then, like, I liked Ruby. As when it comes to Tennessee, whatever his name was, he was a character who I really, really wanted to like, and I did for the most part like him. But man, he had like a giant bullseye on his head from the very beginning. I mean, I feel like in every season there's a character like that. Season 1 kind of had Duck, Season 2 had Sarah, Season 3 had Gabe, and Season 4, 10 was that character of Season 4. Where, you want to like him, and for the most part I did like him. He was a very sweet kid. He had a lot of interesting thoughts, but, when AJ started talking about, 10 really screwed up, that just kind of got me thinking, like, he is a character that's not really built for this world. He could end up being that character, and sure enough, by the end of Season 4, he does kind of become that character, and there is actually a bit of a catalyst with the character as well, which I'll talk about later when I get to the alternate dialogue options of this season. But yeah, like, again, he's kind of one of those characters where I like him, but I kind of knew once it got to a certain point that he was going to be that character. So, it's a character that you like, that you just really wish would stop making dumb moves and these little mistakes that would eventually cost him or someone else their life. And it definitely happened a lot more. It happened more with him than I think it did with AJ, if I'm being perfectly honest. So, it was kind of interesting that they showed that dynamic. And as far as other characters, like a lot of the other school characters, I wish they would have done a little more with them. I did like, what's her name? The redhead, Ruby. I did kind of like her after a while. The chef Omar and Asim and even Willie, I wish they would have maybe spent a little more time with those characters. Because honestly, like, I kept forgetting Omar's name, like, through most of the season, because I'm like, where's that guy with, like, the afro who was the chef? Like, I didn't say that in the video, but I was thinking in my head, like, where is this guy? Like, he hasn't said or done anything, and he really only had, like, I think 4 lines throughout the entire season. I wish they would have done more with him. Asim seemed like a really nice character as well, but again, they just didn't really spend a whole lot of time with him. And as far as the other Erickson kids, I think they all died anyway, so that really wasn't relevant. As far as the bad guys, Lily coming back was a huge surprise. I kind of had a feeling Lily was coming back due to the choices that I had to remake when I started playing Season 4. Because it really focused on that. It was like, did you leave Lily behind, or did you bring Lily with you in Season 1? And here I was like, oh my god, they're going to try to make a comeback, because why else would that be important if that wasn't a thing? So sure enough, when I saw Lily, I was like, okay, that's why they asked me that. Okay, here we go. So it's true. She is back. But I do think she made a good villain character. It is kind of like interesting because, yeah, she would have kind of that animosity built up from what happened with Lee, because Clementine was, such a big ally of Lee, because Lee was the one who taught her how to grow up and all these things that made her a survivor that she was. And obviously, Lily is got to not feel good about Lee because of that. And again, it may have been a little different if I chose to bring Lily with us for a while. But no, when I played Season 1, I'm like, nope, you're staying behind. You shot one of our, best people. we can't take you anymore. So I can kind of understand her being the villain. I think it was a little like, I don't want to say jumping the shark, because it's not really jumping the shark, because these things happen. It's just one of those things where it's like you almost wonder, like, well, we got to bring a character back from season 1 who left on a cliffhanger just to make the shock value higher for this. And while I did get a little bit of that, I don't think it was as blatant as I almost feel like it was with Kenny, because I feel like when season 2 was first coming back, a lot of people were jumping on the Kenny's going to come back bandwagon. I kind of remember reading and hearing about that, and sure enough, Kenny did come back. So I feel like it's not as obvious as it was there, but yeah, bringing her back was interesting. The Abel character, I just didn't like him very much. I just did not like Abel very much. Minerva was kind of an interesting antagonist character. And like, I did kind of look this up. I was wondering if maybe if like you chose some different options, Minerva would have been, you know, a little more kind to you. But then after researching the options, no, it seems like she's always going to be hard on Clementine regardless, because, you know, she's kind of adopted herself into this new group, and she's like, no, you better just join us. Like, do not prolong this war. You're only hurting yourselves if you do this, and you're only hurting all these people who used to be my friends for trying to fight this war. So, you know, after kind of thinking about it, like, it kind of made sense that she became kind of the catalyst at the very end, who ended up kind of contributing to Clem's accident in the final episode. So it makes sense she was the one to kind of do that to Clementine. But she was an interesting character. I do kind of think she was a good kind of antagonist. I think I kind of liked her more than I liked Lily as an antagonist, if I'm being quite honest. Just because, again, she had quite the arc, I guess you could say, being, you know, first part of Erickson, and then, of course, when she joined the Delta and became like this hard badass or whatever. So that was definitely interesting. And I guess the last character I should probably mention is James, the Whisperer. First of all, I do applaud the developers for kind of bringing in the Whispers to an extent, to kind of touch on that story element from the graphic novel and the TV show. They're currently kind of going through the Whisperer arcs right now in the TV show, so, you know, I'm definitely like already kind of hyped up from the TV show. So it was kind of cool to see that there was definitely a mention of them in the video game as well. As far as James as a character, he's a character I really wanted to like at the beginning because of that mindset, but he was definitely a character I kind of like started not liking very much at the very end. And I think a big part of that was the decision I made at the end of episode 3, where I told AJ not to shoot Lily. Honestly, the one decision I made in the project that I actually regret, because yeah, after kind of reflecting on that, I was like, you know, I really should have shot her. She was not good. It's no surprise she was going to end up doing what she did to James. So I really shouldn't have left her alive at the end of that episode. But again, it's hard to say, because at the very end of it, if you did shoot Lily, like, apparently James would be like really, really pissed off and angry at you, and would be just kind of really annoying about it in episode 4 if you did end up killing Lily. So I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted, but of all the decisions I made, all the big decisions, that's the one decision that I kind of, I guess, regret making. But, you know, that's kind of the nature of the game. You have these hard decisions. In the moment, you may do something that you later kind of feel like you shouldn't have done, and that's just, I think, the brilliance of this video game. But yeah, getting back to James, you know, I after seeing the walkers in the barn scene, like, that was a really, really cool scene. It honestly really got me thinking, like, you know, maybe there is more to walkers. This is something I think Clementine would kind of resonate with, and, you know, we need to get his help anyway, so, you know, let's kind of go along with this, and, you know, just kind of take a look at his mindset. But at the very end of it, they did try to kind of push the thought that, at the end of the day, even though walkers are such a unique situation of this new world, because, it's not necessarily death, it's more like life after death. But at the core of it, you have to kind of remember that once you turn into a walker, there's not really any changing back. Because if you die, like, you turn into a walker, but if, like, the walker disease gets removed, you wouldn't just come back alive. Like, your heart would still be shot out wherever you had your fatal injury that caused you to die. That would have still, like, already, like, eaten away at your system. So there's really just no excuse, or there's no reason to keep walkers alive. They're more dangerous and more trouble than they're actually worth, because, walkers turn other people into walkers, and again, you have the same issue. So yeah, it just makes no sense to try to save them. I admittedly got kind of weak in the moment, and as I said, I think I definitely regret that decision I made because of that. So, James was interesting because he did kind of bring that argument and that mindset to the table, and I do respect the creation of his character for that reason. But I definitely have some kind of not really negative thoughts, but regretful thoughts because of his character too. So again, you could say that's good character development because he did do that, but you could also just say that, well, I kind of wish he wasn't here because he did make that. He did kind of contribute to my weird decision making. I don't know. It's a tough can of worms to open, I guess. But yeah, overall, I think they did a great job with the characters this time around. I don't think they're as classic or amazing as they were in Season 1. But, there were a lot of new faces here. There were a lot of new characters that they brought to the table. Some unique personalities. And I give props to where I think props are due. And I think they made some great characters this time around. It's honestly a shame we won't be seeing any more of these characters because the series is over. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. At least Clem kind of ended up with a group of people that I think she seems really happy with. And, I guess as far as AJ and Clementine are concerned, they're great characters. I think they're both great characters. I kind of talked about AJ already earlier in the video, and Clementine's essentially you in this case. So, obviously you want to like yourself, right? So yeah, really, really good on the character development. The next thing I want to talk about are kind of the... not really the decisions in terms of what you chose and what you chose to do or anything. I'm mainly going to be focusing on, I guess, the final episode here with the big decision of Telltale and Skybound to essentially tease or I don't want to say jump scare, but basically the little prank they pulled on us with kind of teasing Clementine's death. Oh man, it's a weird thing. I admittedly think it was a little cheap to do that for reasons I'll be explaining soon. But at the end of the day, I'm just happy Clementine survived the whole thing, because I think that would have been really, really almost kind of a sour note to end the series on if Clementine actually joined too, or actually died too, because I don't know, we spent the entire series protecting her, and I do think it was cool that they were kind of mirroring Season 1 a bit with the final scene in the barn between her and AJ, but I don't know. I just would have not felt so great after that season if that happened. I would have not felt really good about that. So the fact that they did kind of make that reveal that Clementine survived, I'm happy to see that. Now, here's the thing. Her surviving, very, very unrealistic for a couple of reasons. One, her frickin' leg was wide open for a good, like it was nighttime when that happened to her, and it was daytime when she was essentially still living. Like, she was still alive after that. And even, like, after she got bitten, like, it was still plenty of time afterwards that she was just walking around with that. And, like, I know that if you cut off, like, a certain part of your body that gets bitten, like, before the bite gets to, like, the rest of your system, you'll be fine. But just the fact that she had, like, her, like, entire leg open, I guess you could make the argument that because her leg was cut open, maybe, like, some veins were missing from her leg that would carry the bite to the other part of her body, but I guess you could make that argument, but I don't know, it was just very unbelievable that she survived that after, like, it being what looked like hours in between, like, the bite and when, it cut with AJ in the axe and everything. So it was just a very, very unbelievable set of circumstances. But at the end of the day, I am glad Clem survived. As random as the ending was, or I guess the scenario was, I am glad she survived. That's honestly, I think, a good way to end it. It was a nice little surprise after feeling like, your hopes and dreams had been dashed beyond all recognition. I guess that's the best way to put it. So yeah, I did want to very quickly talk about that because that was a big, big kind of plot point of the final episode. So next thing I'm going to talk about very quickly, I want to get into the alternate decisions that you could have made. The first big thing I want to talk about is the potential for relationships, because I noticed this in the credits of the final episode, and after looking at videos and a bunch of other information, it is true. During the playthrough, you can make Violet your girlfriend or Lewis your boyfriend. You can do either of those scenarios, and honestly, I give major applause because, like I said before, I think both of those characters are great. They both, I think, end up being great matches for Clementine, and I really like that. I thought that was kind of cool that they actually made that happen, how you could actually have a relationship with one of those two characters. Now, obviously, for my playthrough, I didn't do either of those because, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, kind of those in-the-moment decisions. And when I was with Violet, when we were doing the stargazing at the top of the bell tower, I just didn't feel it at that moment. If they would have come back to that later, when, I noticed that there was definitely a very, very strong connection between the two, maybe I would have said something different, but at the time, I wasn't really 100% feeling it. I just kind of felt like, at that moment, at least with my choices and what I had seen, they just kind of seemed more like really, really good friends and not really, in terms of, like, relationship stuff. I think if I would have went with Lewis instead, I think I probably would have maybe gone for a relationship there. But, it's hard to say. It was an in-the-moment decision. But at the end of the day, I love that both options were available for both of those characters. And, kind of getting into some stuff that, it's not something I really talk about a whole lot, but is something I think is very important that we do kind of acknowledge and talk about, or mention, at least in this case. I give major applause to the developers for even including the possibility of Clem being in a relationship with another girl. I am a huge supporter of gay rights, and I think that's beautiful that those two individuals, Clementine and Violet, could end up together because, I noticed their strong bond, and I even thought to myself that, there could be something here. I didn't feel it in the moment I made that one decision, but I definitely felt something between those two characters, and I think it's honestly really cool that a choice was even available for that. And, it just kind of shows that we've come a long way, even just in, like, the last few years with when it comes to kind of supporting those types of relationships, because, I think it's a lot more normal than what a lot of other people out there say it is, because you can feel a very strong connection and closeness with anyone. That's just the way it is, and I think it's great that we're kind of starting to grow as a society and realize that, we're all different. We all aren't wired in the same way. There's not really a right or wrong answer to anything. There's, just it's just a very beautiful thing. I really wanted to highlight that very quickly before we moved on to something else. But yeah, you can end up in a relationship with either of those two characters. Not any other characters, though. I did research, and those are the only two characters you can end up with. And I thought it was really, really nice to see that possibility even existed. Although I will admit, I am kind of curious, and maybe this is something I'll try to look at either on my own in a different playthrough, or maybe there's playthroughs that exist already that kind of show this. But I almost wonder, if you end up making a relationship with one of those, doesn't matter who, but then you also choose to save the other one in the end of episode 2, does that, really, really change, things tremendously? Does, the other character just absolutely hate you or despise you then? Or is there still kind of, some kind of romantic thing going on there? I don't know. It's really hard to say, because I did do some more research on who the Raiders capture in the other scenario, because obviously in my story they kidnapped Lewis, and as a result Lewis ended up losing his tongue, which was pretty bad, because he pretty much didn't talk for the rest of the entire season. And that's a shame, because he was a really funny guy. I really enjoyed listening to him. Apparently he gets a lot better if you don't let him get captured. Apparently he's, still his good old goofy Lewis self, and that's all I could ever ask for. But apparently if you let Violet get captured, apparently she's really, really cold towards you when you actually meet her in the prison cell. She almost doesn't want to leave, because she's in almost a better place, and she doesn't have to worry about fighting anymore and all that stuff. It's almost kind of weird. In a strange way, I'm almost kind of glad we ended up with Ruby on our side. But again, it's hard to say that, because it definitely came at Lewis's expense, which I do not like that at all. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe being in a relationship with her would change that. I'll have to do some experimenting at some point, because I am really, really curious about that. But yeah, if she gets put in the cell, I guess she's really angry at you, and she almost tries to stop you from escaping when you try to break out of the prison, which is a little unfortunate, because it's oh, come on, Violet, don't be like Eleanor in season 3, or I'm sure there's other examples that I'm kind of missing or forgetting right now. And I guess if that also happens, at the very beginning of season or episode 4, I guess she's still in the vicinity of the bomb when it goes off in the ship, and something really bad happens to her eyes or something. So that's kind of her disability, or her injury from what happens on the boat, I guess. And she probably also is just very cold to you, or very distant to you for the rest of the season too, just because of that injury. So I don't know. I'll have to do a little more research. That's just what I kind of gathered from that anyway. As I also mentioned, as far as James is concerned, if you end up killing Lily, James is really, really angry at you for the first part of season 4, because you broke your promise to, not let AJ kill anymore. He's also very kind of pushy with AJ. He's give me the gun, don't kill anymore, blah blah blah, otherwise you'll be ruined forever. And it basically just makes Clementine really mad at James, or at least very disappointed in James. So in a sense, while I do feel bad that James got pretty much destroyed for our decision at the end of season 3, at least he kind of went out. We kept his promise, His promise just kind of came at his own downfall, unfortunately. So I kind of like the way he went out as opposed to what I guess the alternative would have been. Although I guess the alternative would be that he would survive, which I guess is, better than dying, but I don't know. It's hard to say with these kinds of games. It's hard to say. And the final alternate choice, I guess, would be in regards to 10. Apparently, if you... when you're talking to AJ in the cave about, like, hey, don't kill anymore, or I'll trust you with killing, like, I said I trusted AJ when I had that conversation. And that basically made AJ shoot 10 because he saw 10 as kind of a lost cause, someone who would have gotten Violet or Lewis killed. And sure enough, if you didn't have that conversation with AJ and you're like, don't do that, AJ, don't take control in your own hands, apparently if you do that, 10 will get Violet or Lewis killed. And as a result, 10 will also survive that encounter too. And that kind of creates a kind of not really an ending scene, but it does create a scene with AJ, like before the end, where he meets AJ on the beach when AJ is doing the fishing. And they have like a little exchange. And apparently like he asks AJ to teach him how to survive in this world because... he doesn't want to make mistakes anymore, which I guess is kind of nice. But I would have felt really bad about his survival coming at the cost of two other characters I really like. So I don't know, it's hard to say, but that is one of the other alternate choices that could have happened. Which I didn't take because, again, I let AJ make his own decisions and obviously killed 10 on the bridge. So because of that, Lewis... or at least Violet, in my case, survived. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about, so I guess I'll just give a final overview of the game. And I'm not just saying about Season 4, but the entire series, because the series is officially over now. I don't think they've mentioned anything about... I mean, I hope not. They called it the final season, so I really hope they don't continue the story. Don't make it a Season 9 of Scrubs situation where they made more after they properly ended the story and made a really, really lame cash cow season that wasn't really even that funny, but that's a different story altogether. Yeah, this is the final season. The Clementine saga is over. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a fun series, even though I did feel my enjoyment kind of slipping off a little bit in Season 2 and Season 3. I still enjoyed playing those. It is really fun to follow the journey of Clementine through this post-apocalyptic world filled with walkers and all kinds of dangerous groups and dangerous people. It was really, really neat. So if you guys ever want to check this out, and I know it's kind of a weird thing to recommend because if you've seen the story once and you kind of already know what's happening, it does make, I think, secondary playthroughs, a lot less, I don't want to say enjoyable, but a lot less impactful because you kind of know the general story, you know how the story is going to end up. I think that does kind of impact your decision making a little bit. But if you for some reason want to live out the journey in your own way, try your own choices, and even if you don't have a problem with kind of reliving the same story again, I definitely recommend you pick up this collection. They have been starting to release a Walking Dead Definitive Edition where they have all 4 seasons in one package. If you can find that, I would definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I had a great time playing through this. There's lots of different dialogue and alternative options that I didn't go for in my playthrough, so if you feel like you want to take a look at your own story and see what you would do differently, and if you want to just in general see something different than what I found, definitely try to look for that Definitive Edition because it's a great game. I started this playthrough back in 2014 when I played the first Walking Dead season. I loved that. I made sure to play every other season at least at some point on my YouTube channel. And as you can see, I've done that. I've played all 4 seasons. It was a great game. I really enjoyed it. And I want to give major thank yous to Telltale and Skybound for making such an enjoyable game. And, you know, I definitely want to give a big shout out to all of the developers and all the people who put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this game because, you know, knowing what we know now about the Telltale working conditions, which halted the production of this season for a couple of months, like, you know, those are workers who had families, who had their own lives that they were trying to, you know, provide support for. And it really sucks to hear that they didn't have great working conditions. And, you know, they put in so many hours, so many tireless hours into this game for us to enjoy. And as someone who really enjoyed this game, I want to give all the thank yous in the world to them for making such a great product. And I'm sorry to hear that it came at the cost of a lot of people's well-being because of, you know, all those things that were coming out about Telltale. I really, really hope all of the workers of The Walking Dead, Telltale, Skybound, whatever you want to call this series now, I really hope they're all properly compensated for all the work that they put into this game because it's an amazing game. It's definitely one of my favorites after having all these great experiences with it. And, you know, I applaud them for putting together a really, really, really fantastic game. This game would have been nothing without all of you guys working on the inside. So I want to give my fondest thank yous to all of you for all the work you did. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's going to do it for The Walking Dead. As I said before, I don't really have any plans to do any other Walking Dead games. I know there's a couple of other games that are out there that are, you know, branding the Walking Dead name, but I don't think they're necessarily like this game, though. And really, it was this gameplay, this kind of make your own decisions, interacting with all the characters, and that kind of stuff. That's what, you know, drew me into this game. That's what drew me into the Walking Dead series in general. And that's why I wanted to play this series. I didn't want to play it because, oh my god, shooting zombies, fun. And I feel like a lot of those other games are kind of like that. So I don't really see myself covering any more Walking Dead content on this channel unless it's another game like this. So I'm going to go ahead and say that now. And with that, I think I'm officially going to close this up. So this has been SlimKirby. I hope you guys enjoyed all 4 seasons of The Walking Dead and all the DLC in between. I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you guys to the next project. Later, folks.